Hey guys, Mark Torcus here. So, all 40 of the Cosmic Creation expansion cards have been revealed at this point, and in this video I was hoping to get started on doing my impressions of the cards that we've seen. In this one we're going to look at all of the pairs of cards given to the regions that aren't getting champions, and then I'm also going to do 3 videos with Victor, Zoe, and Riven, and all the cards that are going along with them. So let's just hop into it and start checking out these cards. Alright, so the first two we're going to look at are the Freljord ones. So this one is It That Stares, 8 mana, 8/8, and when you play it, you either obliterate all landmarks, or you deal 2 damage to all other units. So it's basically Avalanche on a stick on turn 8, or it's landmark removal. Given what I've seen from all the landmarks that we're getting and all the landmarks that we've seen in the past, I don't really think that the landmark removal is going to be that important. Maybe if it is, then you end up running this for that purpose, but generally speaking, I think we've only seen one landmark really see much play, and no one's really bothered a whole lot towards getting removal for it, just because it's just not a huge enough impact on the meta. But if we see more landmarks getting play, then maybe you will try to tech in some landmark removal here and there. But generally speaking, I think this is more likely to be used for the 2 damage to all units. And in that case, it's a lot slower than Avalanche. Avalanche you can play as early as turn 3. This coming down on turn 8 or later is going to be much less impactful in dealing with aggression or anything like that. You don't really need a 2 damage AoE board clear to beat out aggro on turn 8. By then you probably wrecked if you didn't have it already. So that's not really going to work. What it does do though is it gives you a big body, and it may clear out any blockers that you have from your opponents in a later state of the game. Like if you do manage to get them down to 2 or less health, then having this 8 damage unit that no longer has anyone in the way, that does seem pretty good. But overall, I don't think it's especially powerful. You might run one of them here or there as like some extra late game type of tech option, but I don't think it's going to have a super huge impact on the meta in any shape or form. Not unless landmarks become really a big thing, and even then, you might be going for whatever landmark removal you have in your other region, since it's always going to be cheaper, basically. I guess unless it is in Shadow Isles, because they have the 8 mana landmark removal as well, and theirs is much worse than this, so maybe that would be the place that you'd see it. Alright, so the next card we have is the Scar Grounds. So it's a 3 mana landmark. When an ally survives damage, grant it +1 attack and tough. So obviously this is meant to be paired with Vladimir and the Noxus Freljord Scar type package with all the self-damage units and such. I do think that this does make that archetype look a lot stronger when you have this in that deck. However, I still don't think it really matches up and will be able to keep up with other things out there. I did mess around with that archetype pretty recently, and I found that it's just a little too slow. It takes too much to trigger all of the stats really building up for you to really catch up with everyone else that's there on board. And actually having to commit a 3 mana play to doing nothing just so your future plays will be able to start really having more of an impact really doesn't sound like what it needs to be able to keep up with things that are out there right now. So I don't think this will be super good. I could be wrong. The tough might be what really has the impact, not just because of the fact that you're the one damaging it, but because the actual combat between your units and your opponent's units could really be impacted by that tough. So we'll see, but again, I don't think it's going to be that good. I think both of these Freljord cards are going to be pretty underwhelming, to be honest. Then we have the Ionia cards. So we have their landmark, Monastery of Harana, 3 mana, and at round start, create a Sanctuary in hand. Sanctuary is a 1 mana burst speed spell that recalls an ally, and it's one of those cards that can't be cast during combat or in response to a spell. So you're getting to recall an ally for 1 mana every turn. Just bounce it back to your hand, and you can instantly replay it because it is a burst speed card. So Ionia does already have a lot of recall support. We've got quite a few cards that recall allies already. Then you have this coming in. You're playing this on turn 3, and then getting the chance to recall an ally every turn. But you still have to spend that mana to replay the ally, so you're spending all this extra mana, like 3 mana up front, 1 mana every turn, then the mana of the actual ally. You could use this with Greenglade Elder and like try and buff up your hand and stuff, but it seems like a really, really slow strategy, and I don't imagine that working very well. We already have seen that kind of thing before, and it's kind of fallen out of the meta because it can't keep up. This doesn't make it keep up anymore. It just almost even slows it down further than it already is, and just makes it mega value. And I don't know what deck you're supposed to be able to beat with a strategy like that. It's definitely not going to be able to keep up with the stuff we have now. And honestly, I think a lot of the cards we're seeing are going to maybe make the meta a little bit faster with the archetypes that they're supporting. So this card looks absolutely terrible. I don't think anyone's going to use this. I'm going to try to see if I can make some Mimi decks with it, but I don't expect any success with them at all. And then the other Ionia card is also recall support card. It is Homecoming, 5 mana fast speed spell. Recall an ally unit or landmark to recall an enemy unit or landmark. So it's effectively Will of Ionia, but you also have to recall your own ally. And it does let you target landmarks, but again, like I said with It That Stares, I don't think the landmarks are going to be insane or really require removal that badly. And if you do need removal, you're probably not going to use this card. This card is just Will of Ionia, but it's easier to cancel and has a cost. You could say that if you wanted to recall the ally already, then it's not a cost. Like, you could use this defensively to recall your ally and put their enemy back in the hand at the same time, kind of protecting your ally. But that means that it's way weaker when you're using it in the opposite way, where you're trying to bounce their thing because it's attacking or something. Like, often you'd see Will of Ionia used to bounce back a Tryndamere or something while it's attacking. If you were to use this in the same way, you would consider this to be a much worse card, and it would be just as easy as removing the ally that you're trying to bounce for them to not lose their card at all and still get to use their attack. So when we already have Will of Ionia out there, and honestly, Will of Ionia doesn't even see that much play these days, nor does Ionia in a huge amount either. I don't think this is going to be seeing any play. I think this is a terribly useless card. Then we have the Bilgewater cards. So the first one is Wiggly Bubblefish. 6 mana, 3/1 elusive. Its cost is reduced by 1 for each spell you've cast this game. And when it is summoned, it creates a 1-cost spell from your regions in hand. So I basically only see one place that I'd expect this to see play, and that would probably be a Fizz deck. We have seen spell-oriented elusive Fizz decks before, where you combine it with Starlit Seer and stuff and try to buff up your elusives and then smack them in the face with that. I think this would fit really well into that deck. We haven't really seen that deck in a while, like, it hasn't been super good lately. Maybe this would help that a little bit, so it's possible. I don't really think that's a big thing that might happen soon, but maybe in the future this will fit into that deck when it does finally end up working out really well. Although you never know, maybe a 0 mana elusive like this, once you do discount it that much, might be just what they need to kind of really push, like, a huge burst of damage all at once. And that could just blow people out, and maybe they don't have any answer for that kind of a thing. So we'll see. It might end up having a decent amount of impact, but again, I think now in this meta that we're going to be going in probably isn't the right time for it. Then we have Boom Ship, 3 mana slow speed spell. Deal 1 to a unit, and then summon powder kegs equal to the damage dealt. So obviously, before buffing the damage, it is 3 mana, deal 1, get 1 keg. That is not a good deal, I'd say, especially at slow speed. You could buff it with other powder kegs. You could buff it with Funsmith, because Funsmith was recently buffed, and we have seen it being used a little bit in experimentation. Not really a huge thing in any real decks right now, but could definitely have more of an impact than it has in the past. And stuff like Dreadway, though that's a much, much more expensive option, because it is a 9 mana card. But I think the general case, maybe it goes with Funsmith, but that's still a little upgrade. You're doing 1 extra damage, you're getting 2 powder kegs instead. It helps in, like, the next spell will be doing like 3 more because you have the Funsmith and 2 kegs. So it might work out when you, like, put it all together, but it's still hard for me to really wrap my head around that really being a thing. If you're using powder kegs to buff it up, you're kind of offloading all the damage of the kegs and then replacing them +1, so that's not bad. But the main thing, though, is it's really cancelable, and it's slow speed, and then all those like ideas of kegs coming back isn't gonna come true. So that's definitely like a really big downside to it. A 3 mana slow speed removal is not the strongest thing you've ever seen, and if it's gotta have setup beforehand, then and its baseline is so weak at 1 damage, you're just asking a lot of you. People have been talking about the Unyielding Spirit powder keg deck, where your Unyielding Spirit goes onto the keg and the keg will never ever die and you keep using it over and over. This would be perfect for that deck, but that deck is already a crazy meme as it is. Even if you do land the Unyielding on it, if something like Hush were to hit it, then it ends up being useless again anyways. So, probably just going to be a meme card. I don't think we're going to see any real play out of this card. But it's definitely a cool concept. Then on to our Demacia cards, we have Captain Arika, 8 mana 6/6 Elite with Spell Shield, and when you play her, you capture a unit or landmark. So this seems like a really good card. This is one of those cards where I feel you could actually run this, and you don't run it for the landmark removal, but you have it there anyways. Just, if you can capture a large unit with this, and then it's got Spell Shield, it's a 6/6 body, which obviously is a little smaller than you'd like at 8 mana, but the Spell Shield is very important. And basically getting it Attain for, I don't know, 2 mana, if you're saying that 6/6 Spell Shield is already good for 6 mana, which I would, then you're paying 2 mana for Detain, effectively, that has the upside of sometimes being able to use on landmarks if that's what you so choose. Then that seems really good. As long as your deck is allowed to go later, and I know that a lot of Demacia decks don't really want to go too late. Normally they top off often at around 6 mana is your finishers for a lot of these Demacia decks. But if you did have like a little bit slower of a Demacia deck, I could see you putting this in there, and it would make a lot of sense, I think. Maybe like a Lux deck. Lux decks would probably love to see something like this, and I know we haven't really seen much Lux lately, but if we did, then I think this would be a perfect fit for a deck like that. It looks very strong. It's just going to matter whether the right decks are in the meta for it to fit, but I'm sure in the future, no matter what, this is going to hit some lists eventually 100%. Then we have the Landmark, which is the Grand Plaza, 3 mana. When an ally is summoned, give it +1/+1 and Challenger this round. So this is probably the best Landmark we've seen up to this point. It seems absolutely nuts. It is a little bit of a tempo loss, as are pretty much all of the Landmarks, but the tempo gain from having Challenger on literally anything you play and a stat buff is absolutely insane. Like, you will never need removal if you can just drop any unit and give it Challenger every time you play anything. You could combine this with Shadow Isles and get some really good stuff with, like, using your Ephemerals as removal, or with Undying. You can always have your Undying coming in. Obviously, it won't be having Challenger this next time it comes back, but if you do resummon it or something on your attack turn, then it would work out really well. But it just seems really, really strong. I think you can fit this in a lot of different decks. A lot of different concepts can be worked around with this. I think it's definitely... This is what we want to see more of from Landmarks. We want to see something that actually does something, that actually has a reason to fit in the deck, because so many of them are just really a meme. They're like too slow, they're really inconsistent. You know, the deep one works really well just because it does turn into a minion, but this one is a really well designed Landmark in my opinion, and I think we'll definitely see some decks with this in it. I think it's really cool. Then we have our Shadow Isles cards. They are both ephemeral cards. So the first one is Evershade Stalker. 2 mana, 2/2, ephemeral with Fearsome and Nightfall. Create a copy of me in hand. And it also cannot block. So this looks really, really exciting to me. For the main reason that it is a way to activate Nocturne rather effectively without anything else being committed to the deck. With this alone, you can basically guarantee that you're eventually going to level up your Nocturne without having to use any other cards. You just have to keep playing Evershade Stalkers and attacking with them, and then the Nocturne will be leveled up that way. So that opens up so much deck building possibilities with Nocturne decks. Before, we've just seen the obvious Diana Nocturne, Nightfall, full committal. Every Nightfall has to go into the deck basically, just so that you can finish both of the level up on each of the champions and really be able to be effective with that. this is just so much better with that. So now I can't immediately think of any way that I do it, but I'm going to try and fit this into things and make Nocturne work in other decks. And also, it really excites me because I've been playing a lot of Hecarim lately, and just being able to do Shark Chariot whenever you feel like it. I've been making decks where it's kind of just super non-committal, just control deck, and then you summon Shark Chariots here and there off of your few ephemeral cards, and that's enough to put up pressure and actually get the Hecarim leveled up before you play him. This would be a super easy way to do that, because it creates a new copy of itself, and then the next time you're going in for the attack, you have it ready again, you summon all your Shark Chariots. So, great Hecarim support too. Any ephemeral deck, any Nightfall deck, I really like this card. I think it's going to be really cool. And then the other card is 0 mana, Pesky Spectre. It's ephemeral and a 1/1, and Last Breath, create 2 copies of me in the enemy deck. So there is a card in Hearthstone which is almost exactly like this. It was a squirrel that would go into their deck, create 2 copies, and then, you know, the same idea. Every time this thing dies, it will make their deck worse, and then they'll draw it and they'll make your deck worse, and eventually both of your decks are getting pretty crappy. I think that one did do 1 copy though, and this does do 2. So it's like really snowballing the whole idea. I think this would be really sick if you just like try and duplicate them a bunch. I'm not sure exactly what the math would be, but being able to disrupt your opponent's draws can definitely be impactful, especially against certain decks that really need to find specific cards to really function. And if you manage to just keep putting more and more in there, that'll really screw up their game plan. Beyond that, it's also a play that you can just do on turn 1. Eat it with a butcher or something like that. It's great for sacrificing because it is just 0 mana. And it ends up being kind of a good tempo tool in that way, though you are committing 2 cards and that's a little iffy. But otherwise, like, this has a lot of potential. I don't know if it'll fit into like any real decks, but the meme decks you're going to see out of this are going to be totally nuts. I'm definitely going to make a Pesky Spectre deck, you can bet on that. So I'm really interested in this card, and we'll have to see what ends up happening with it. So that's going to be it for this video. We're going to hop into the rest of the cards in the next one. So thank you guys for watching. I appreciate it. Please leave a like if you enjoyed the video. Comment down below what you think of these cards. And please subscribe if you'd like to see more of my content in the future. And I'll see you guys in the next one.